Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Biblio Files, a show from the Ann Arbor District Library in Michigan that's all about books. Each episode, we spend just a few minutes on a book-related theme, and this time we're talking about awesome audio books. I'm Christopher, and I'm joined, as always, by Amanda and Lucy. Amanda, what book did you listen to this time?
All right, so I'm excited about this episode. I think I've said this in previous episodes, but I'm newer to enjoying and loving audiobooks as of summer 2021. So I didn't really know what to pick for today, but I decided to go with an audiobook I really loved, which was the 1983 horror novel, Pet Sematary by Stephen King. I wanted this spooky book to listen to in the fall, and normally I would not read or listen to a book where I've already seen all of the movie adaptations where I already know the premise pretty well, but I hadn't read that book and I enjoy Stephen King. So I'm like, I'm going to read that one. And so I decided to go with the audio, and I am very glad I did. The audio is narrated by Michael C. Hall, who we know from Dexter and from 6 Feet Under. His narration was amazing. He brought those characters and those voices to life, which is the opposite of what happens over in the Pet Sematary, or is it? I feel like this story in this book has been around since the 80s, and even if you haven't seen it already, you know some of the premise. So the basic idea is that there is a doctor named Lewis Creed, and he and his wife and two young children, they move to the town of Ludlow, Maine, and things start happening while they're there, but eventually our character, Lewis Creed, meets the next door neighbor, Judd Crandall. Judd Crandall is an older gentleman. He ends up being sort of a father figure to Lewis. They have beers on the porch most nights, just discussing life and some of the strange things that are going on. And Judd tells amazing stories. And the narrator of the audio does a great job bringing Judd Crandall to life. I really enjoyed Judd as a character in all of the movies as well. So it was fun to hear the voice being told. So Judd tells him, oh, hey, the street is really busy. Watch your kids. Judd tells him, hey, there's a pet cemetery across the street where kids bury their dead pets. But after even more strange and horrible things start happening, Judd is also the one who tells Dr. Lewis Creed about the cemetery beyond the pet cemetery. So, which is on an ancient burial ground. And the idea is that when you bury things there, they come back to life. Is that good? Is that bad? So all kinds of strange things happen, bizarre. This novel is dark. It's horror. It's horror. So if you are not into like gore and like, there's parts of it that I cried and I was standing still and just like listening to it. I was listening to this horrible story being told. But if you like if you like a horror novel, this one is definitely scary and it has a super dark element. So, I mean, there's just the death and darkness just sets into the story and to the family and to Judd and just the town of Ludlow, Maine. So I really, really enjoyed listening to the audio. If you've already seen the movie and you just want to listen to a horror novel at some point, maybe in October, I totally recommend Pet Sematary by Stephen King as narrated by Michael C. Hall. So that is my choice of an awesome audiobook that I would recommend. Lucy, what did you bring to share today?
So I have a young adult book. I have the actual book right here. It's called Kent State by Deborah Wiles. And this is actually a novel in verse, but it's very free verse. So when you're listening to it, you don't necessarily even notice it's verse. And it has 7 different narrators and they all play different roles. And it's the story of what happened at Kent State during the protest for Vietnam War. So it's about the protest and the unrest about the Vietnam War when it really comes to a head. And there were 4 people killed at Kent State and 9 injured. And it was American troops who killed them, and happened on May 4th, 1970. So this book is remembering that day, but it's also remembering some of what led up to it. And the way that it's unusual is that because it has all these different narrators, they're representing all these different characters who were affected by the happenings at Kent State. And so you get all these different vantage points. You get the point of a protester, you get the point of a guardsman, townies, students. And so they somehow have conflicting views about the occurrences there, and the Vietnam War and the protest and all of that. As I said, the verse is very subtle. So when you're listening to it, you don't really notice the verse, but what you do notice is like the intensity of the story, because the narrators are all talking to each other. It almost feels like you're listening to a play. So it's very dramatic. It's really short. And so it's this kind of condensed, chaotic group of voices with people who are at odds with each other, which I think is really reflective of the whole event. And then it also talks a lot about the 4 people who were killed: Allison, Jeff, Sandy, and Bill. And they were just arbitrarily shot by bullets. And one thing that this book does that's really a different way to memorialize them is sort of looking at this collective memory in a way. It's a way of honoring history by getting all these different viewpoints, but then the people who are narrating it remember things about Sandy and Jeff and Allison and Bill. Like, oh, remember Sandy did this in our dorm, or, oh, I really liked Sandy, or Bill, was involved with this. And then someone will say, no, he wasn't. And so it's really bringing those people to life. And by imagining them, you really get a sense of how the people who are narrating it felt connected to the protest and to the events at hand. And at the end of the book, the author has this note where she explains how she came to tell the story and how it was produced, and how she really had to honor history, but understand how history is based a lot on memory, and how she says, like, nothing in the book is made up, but it's a story still made of opinions and faulty memories. And that is, I think, it's an unusual way to tell history, and it's an important way to tell history too, because you're getting a more reflected view. So as far as this being an awesome audiobook, I think it is because it's so short and it's so intense, and you have all these voices that you just almost feel like you're just there. And there are sound effects in the audiobook, which I think really enhance it, because you have all these students packed into this place and troops are shooting at them. And it's kind of an interesting reminder of the fact that that happened in this country. And so it doesn't take long to listen to, but I recommend Kent State by Deborah Wiles. Christopher, what do you have?
Well, I took the chance to listen to a new audiobook. It just came out recently. It's Erik Larson's book, No One Goes Alone. And I thought it was interesting because this is Erik Larson's first fiction book, and it's audiobook only. So this is the only way to appreciate this new book. The book is set in 1905, where 8 personalities go to an island to investigate a lot of disappearances in a large house. It is a ghost story, and it's a kind of classic ghost story with a lot of creepy and mysterious things that happen. There are some real historical figures that Larson has fictionalized. So he brings in William James, the real brother of Henry James, who wrote The Turn of the Screw, which is a famous ghost story. And as the story progresses, more and more creepy things are happening in this house and on the island itself. So there are these mysterious fires. There's a curious lack of all animal and insect wildlife on the island. Bodies begin to wash up on the shore, and they are trying to decide whether the paranormal or the kind of any kind of mystical realm exists at all. That's really the purpose of their visit to the island, to debunk or affirm the fact that there is some kind of spiritual realm. So in a way, it's a kind of classic setup with these 8 people going to an island. And there is a lot that goes on between the characters. One character is kind of there to set everyone up and reveal how foolish they were for even believing that there could be a spiritual realm. There's some flirtatious relationships going on, jealousies, lots of things are happening, all packed into, I think it's about a 10-hour audiobook, so it's a quick read. I do have to say, the ending is a bit of a head scratcher. And most people online will say something similar. Great, a slow burn with all these mysterious things happening, but I've never quite seen a book ending like this that has a strange figure that sort of prefigures World War II from the future. But it's a little bit more complicated and maybe confusing than that. However, the whole lead up is great, and it's this kind of classic ghost story that so many of us love. Well, there we have some awesome audiobooks, and I think that's about it. I think we'll be back next time with another brand new book topic. Until then, happy reading.